Coming up on this week's show, a follow-up to one of the best beat-em-ups ever is coming.
A new PS1 hack has been revealed.
And we go behind the scenes at Ocean with Bill Harbison.
The Retro Hour podcast is brought to you each week with our amazing friends at Bitmap Books. Now, if you're a fan of the Super Nintendo, you've got to check out the unofficial SNES Pixel book, which features 272 pages celebrating the golden age of 16-bit gaming on Nintendo's ultra-popular console. So if you want to check that out and lots more as well, visit their website at bitmapbooks.co.uk. Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour podcast, episode number 267, your weekly dose of retro gaming and technology news with me, Dan Wood.
Me, Ravi Abbott.
And me, Joe Fox.
And a very warm welcome to this week's show. You know, for me, I don't know if you guys are the same, always a highlight of the week this for me. Just before the weekend, we get to just kick back for an hour and talk about our favourite thing in the world, classic video games.
I really love it. We've got such a good community here. Not only do I like doing the episodes weekly, but also the patrons are just absolutely amazing. We had a wicked patron chat and I've started live streaming. So we've got a new channel, which is on Twitch, the Retro Hour. And, you know, we're going to be streaming loads of different content. We've got a few plans for this channel and I've been streaming a few strategy games. It's been quite good fun, actually. It's like meeting up with a whole group of mates when you're streaming. It's really interactive as well.
You know, I loved, because I watched back the stream that you did on Saturday. Obviously, still getting used to it. There's about 10 minutes of you fixing your microphone in the middle of it.
See, that would be me. Like, you guys would be like, jump on, Joe, do some action games. And it'd just be like 15 minutes of my bum crack trying to, leaning over, trying to work out the mic or something.
Now you're selling it, Joe.
I tell you, it's so hard to set up. I'm amazed with these streamers and what they do because, you know, God, the amount of equipment, scenes, kind of capturing the games, getting the sound levels, it's quite mad. But once you get used to it, it's fun. But it's going to take a while.
I'd forget somebody's watching me as well. I'd be like picking my nose or something.
Yeah, because Joe is going to do a bit of streaming as well. I mean, we've been looking at capture cards and that kind of thing too. So we did actually do a few streams probably about 2 years ago, didn't we? With Bitmap Books, their adventure game book. I streamed some Monkey Island, I remember. I think you played Police Quest.
Yeah, and that was on YouTube, wasn't it? So, but that was really simple. We just had a simple overlay. This is all widgets and Stream Decks and God knows what these days.
Way more stuff to go wrong. So, yeah, definitely come and check us out at our new Twitch channel, which I'll put in this week's show notes as well. Now, of course, plenty to talk about on this week's show. We are going to be going behind the scenes at an amazing company. I mean, Ocean Software. We've done episodes about Ocean before. We actually did a live panel with Gary Bracey at Play Expo in Blackpool that we put out on the show a couple of years ago. But, you know, Ocean, they were really the king of the licensed games, weren't they, back in the day?
Yeah, and you know, you usually get licensed games and licensed movies and, you know, they're not that good, but we talk about some excellent licenses that were happening. You know, Batman was a great one, Jurassic Park as well, and we talked with Bill Harbison from Ocean. It's a really fascinating chat this week.
Yeah, and I mean, even going back, you know, before that, he worked on stuff like, you know, Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge, that I think, you know, that was the third one in the Daley Thompson trilogy. It came out in 1988. He worked on Robocop. So yeah, Bill, he's a really interesting guy. So if you're a fan of Ocean Software, he worked on loads of their games back in the day. So real insight into Ocean during their heyday coming up with Bill Harbison on the Retro Hour podcast in around 20 minutes from now. Now, as soon as we finished recording last week's show, literally about 5 minutes after we finished it, this trailer landed for the follow-up to one of my all-time favourite arcade games. Now, this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. How amazing does this look?
This looks awesome, man. This is right up my street. It's right up Dan's street. Not so sure about Ravi's. It's not a strategy game, so I don't know if it's up your street.
No, I still enjoy that co-op playing, yeah.
But yeah, no, literally, it was the first thing I did after we stopped recording last week, quickly check my phone. And it was the top thing on Facebook, Teenage Mutant, I can't even say it, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Keep that in because it's funny and it's embarrassing. Shredder's Revenge, yeah, the sequel to Turtles in Time. Well, a pseudo sequel to Turtles in Time. And this actually comes from Daemyu, who we had on the show last year, who did Streets of Rage 4, which is really cool. And they were saying, they've got a really cool IP that they're working on at the moment. And a lot of us were like, Golden Axe kind of thing, because he said it was from the 16-bit era. But obviously he was on about Turtles. But yeah, man, this looks awesome. I feel like they, a lot of the feedback about Streets of Rage 4 was the art style. Not many people were keen on the hand-drawn style and wanted the 16-bit pixel graphics back. And it seems like they've listened to that and brought that back for this, which I think a few people will be happy about.
Yeah, one of the games I actually streamed was Streets of Rage 4, and I like the way that you could actually go back in and have some of the pixel graphics in there.
Some of the old characters, yeah.
This one looks pure pixels. And, these are the right guys to do it, aren't they? They did a fantastic job on that. Yeah,
absolutely. We've not got a release date yet, but we've got an awesome reveal trailer with a new rendition of the original theme tune, which is pretty good actually. But it just says it's coming to console and PC, soon. It just says coming soon. But with Streets of Rage 4, they kind of did that as well. They didn't say when it was coming out until a week before. They did the initial, a trailer to the reveal trailer a year before, didn't they? And then they did a full-on reveal trailer like this, and then literally I remember you contacted them and they're like, yeah, it's coming out next week, and we were like, let's get you guys on straight away kind of thing. So don't know when it'll come out, but if it was anything like that, I don't think we'll have to wait long. But yeah, it looks like it's 4-player couch co-op and online, and I'm sure it'll probably be on Xbox One, PS4, PS5, etc.
You mentioned the new version of the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song. This is actually by Mike Patton from the band Faith No More.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
So this is it here. Listen.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage
I can hear it now.
Ninja Turtles, Teenage
Amazing.
Mutant Ninja Turtles, heroes in the hot shell.
Copyright claim.
And you look at it, and they've got because the trailer they put out there, it's about 1.5 minutes long, and the first probably a minute or so of it is what looks like it could be a scene or an intro from the 1987 cartoon that was on telly. It is that well drawn, and that well animated. It looks like it's straight out the cartoon.
Yeah, 100%. It was a proper throwback.
And then the game itself, reminds me so much of the arcade title. I love the little touches they've got in there as well. I mean, obviously, like you said, these guys are the right guys to do it, having, that reputation of doing, really good retro pedigree games like Streets of Rage 4. I love the fact that you can even throw the enemies into the screen, like you could on the original as well. All those little touches are in there as well.
I literally played I was playing the Cobra Kai beat 'em up the other week, and one of the achievements is you throw somebody into the screen, and it was literally called Cowabunga Dude, the achievement.
Right.
And I was like, nice. So yeah, I'm so glad they've got that in there again.
And this is the period of Turtles that I absolutely loved. When everybody was mad on Turtles and they had the cartoons and everything. This was the peak Turtles for me.
Turtle Mania, yeah.
I'm really hoping it's in there as well, though. The manhole covers. When you fall down.
Who turn the lights out? Yeah, I'm sure they will be.
Yeah, so really excited for this. So we'll put a link to the trailer if you want to check it out in our show notes at theretrohour.com. Now, also in the last week, we've got some very sad news that an inventor of a technology that not only changed our life in terms of computers, but also music as well. This was the inventor of the cassette tape. Sadly passed away. This is a chap called Lou Ottens, who was 94 years old. He was a Dutch engineer, and he was also instrumental in the development of the first CD when he worked at Philips as well. But he was the brainchild behind the micro cassette tape, as they called it back then. That obviously not only put music into our pockets, when the Walkman came along, but also, early home computers. That was the way that, especially here in Britain, until the late 80s, a lot of us would go out and all our game collection will be on cassette tapes. So he's really to thank for so much in our lives.
Yeah, it's a fantastic kind of story. I really didn't know this, but he created a radio device because he was Dutch. And, with the German occupation of the Netherlands with the Nazis, they basically used jammers so people couldn't use the local radios or listen to local radios. So he built a radio to kind of circumvent these jammers, and then later, that was when he was a kid, he later then went on to do the cassette tape. And it's really interesting. One of the taglines originally was that it was smaller than a packet of cigarettes. I don't know if you could kind of have that tagline nowadays, but it was a really nice little kind of compact device. And, you know, the quality of tape is quite high sometimes. He kind of says, you know, he was quoted talking about CDs and nothing can match the sound of a CD. But I kind of liked metal tapes. Do you remember those? The really, really high quality ones. If you look on eBay now for metal tapes, my God, they're expensive.
So I've read some articles, you know, about his obituary and kind of his story as well that are interesting. Apparently, someone had asked him in recent years what he thought of kind of the, you know, the comeback of cassettes, you know, that kind of retro fans are getting into them again. And he kind of snubbed it a bit, saying that, you know, we need to move on. It's like he didn't agree that they were still worth listening to. But I think you're right, because, you know, there are videos on YouTube. Techmoan in particular did a few really good videos. You know, I think one of them is called Cassette Tapes Better Than You Don't Remember. And he shows, you know, those kind of really, you know, the metal tapes and those really high quality ones. So obviously stuff like, you know, digital audio tape came along shortly after, well, in the 80s, I think that was. But yeah, I think a lot of our experience of listening to music on cassette tapes was, you know, bad recordings off the radio, listened to on our cheap little Walkmans or, you know, ghetto blasters or boom boxes. So we probably didn't get the best experience that you would have listening on really high-end kit.
Well, they're running Google servers at the moment on big tapes, and it's obviously storing information on there, really huge amounts of data, but it's not a cassette tape that they're running it on. A giant cassette tape.
Gmail doesn't run on a cassette tape. Yeah.
But I interestingly read that him and his father set up a company in 1968. You know, they were supplying it, and then another company came out which was called the National Audio Company. Now, if you go to 2021, the National Audio Company, with only 30 employees, is now producing 95% of the world's cassette tapes, because there has been a revival. So this old company is still kind of doing it in Springfield in America, and they're just like producing these, and it's pretty amazing to see this revival. There's been like recent films like Guardian of the Galaxies that's had
the soundtrack.
Tape. Yeah, the soundtrack on tape. I've gone into record stores, seen a little tape revival. You know, there's still people producing games on tape. It's pretty mad to see it still going.
Yeah, a friend of mine actually put a video up. He lives in Dubai, of Virgin Megastore that they still have out in Dubai, and there, you know, their shelves are full of like new albums on cassette. So they are still coming out, you know, in high street shops around many places in the world. But I think in terms of even, you know, you think back to the 80s, we got video games on cassette tape, because disc drives back then, if you want to get a disc drive for your Commodore 64, you know, it cost as much as a computer. So having this cheap, affordable medium that we could buy games on for, you know, £2 sometimes, that really did enable an entire industry, didn't it? I mean, I can't imagine that gaming or computers will be what they are today without cassette tapes.
One of the first things we did in sound engineering school was we recorded ourselves saying like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they gave us a knife and some tape, and they said, right, cut that up, and you'd cut the tape, so, and then reorder it, and it'd go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it was like, well, cool.
Was that on cassette tape?
Yeah.
Showing your age there, mate.
Well, it was just showing the kind of principles, but yeah, it was really, really interesting.
You know, I've got a few cassette. Funnily enough, that familiar sound of a cassette tape. I did find a bunch of them recently. These kind of old ones that I've been going through and just recording, using like a high-end deck that I got from work a couple of years ago. It is quite interesting playing them again and everything, but I do not miss it as a medium, I must say. There are a few of these here that are all like crinkled up. And do you ever get that when a tape would kind of bend and it would go the wrong way and you could never get it back?
Yeah, you've got
the
a
tape
pen
inside
and you've got to rewind it,
or it's twisted.
Or take the whole kind of casing out and then rebuild it in a new piece of casing just to get that old tape. Like, also, if you think about it, tapes were the kind of early Napster or social media of the days, because mixtapes and like, you know, house music and lots of dance music, hip hop would get shared on tape, and it would, you know, there'd be copies of a copy of a copy that would go round, and there'd be still these legendary tapes, and that's kind of how they spread it before the internet, kids.
All those girls that you wooed in your teenage years, Ravi, with mixtapes. You wouldn't be able to do that without Lou Ottens.
God, I've still got some that girls owe me. Like, I might contact him nowadays, years later. Where's that tape I lent you at school?
So, rest in peace, Lee Watkins. There are not many people that you can say, absolutely changed the world, but he definitely did so. Rest in peace, and thank you for all the music and the games. Now, the PlayStation 1, obviously you'd think that was the system that we kind of knew everything about, being out for 26, 27 years since that system was made. But apparently it turns out that there is a new software hack that's allowed the PlayStation to be unlocked.
This, a little bit over my head, this one. So apparently, so it's called Tony Hacks, which I love, because apparently all you need is a copy of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, a legitimate copy, to do this exploit, which, like you say, opens it up. And apparently it's part of the Create a Skater mode, which is found on Tony Hawk's 2, 3, and 4. I didn't think number 4 came out on the PS1, but I could be wrong, but they're using number 2 in this video. And essentially when you go into the custom character, when you save the name, apparently there was an oversight with the length of the name. And from what I understand, I'm really simplifying it here. I'm hoping Ravi knows a little bit more about it. But when essentially, if you put in certain digits and you make the name too long, essentially it kind of opens up I don't know the name of it, but it just opens it up so that you can then play copied games, and you just swap the game over to a copied game and it will just run the game without chipping the PlayStation essentially.
Yeah, so this is called a buffer overflow. And basically, I'm surprised that this wasn't found before, because Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, it's a really common game, and everyone's on the create escape mode. But if you think about titles like Toy Story that they had on the DS, I think it was on the Game Boy as well, like Brain Training that they use on the Nintendo, it's on the Wii U. It's a way to kind of insert and exploit code. So it's
like a payload.
To run exploited code and basically run code that's not originally meant to be on the system. So what they've managed to do is they've managed to get the payload, which is on a memory card.
Right.
So they put that in, and then they do the buffer overflow trick, and then that actually
they overflow it by putting the code into the
Skater. The Creator Skater would cause that screw up, basically, right. And then it contacts the memory card, gets this kind of code to this payload to load up some custom software, and then you can put your burnt CD-ROM in there and play straight away. No chipping or anything required. Of course, you could just put a piece of paper in there and do the older little pen trick or the swap trick, but this is a nice other way of doing it, and I'm just so surprised this hasn't been found before, because this is pretty much the method that everybody uses to exploit the Wii, exploit most consoles.
You see, it's interesting because I want to know, what was the thought process to go back and kind of I'm guessing somebody was going through the code for Tony Hawk's 2 and just found it, that there wasn't a limit on the Create a Skater name thing, and thought, oh wow, that's a good way of hacking the PlayStation. It's just what was the thought process behind that? Maybe, like you say, they already were more than aware of the things of brain training and stuff with the Wii and the Wii U and stuff, and they were thinking of a game that you could potentially do it with on the PS1. That's the only thing I can think of, but I think that's more interesting than the fact that they managed to get it to play copied games through Tony Hacks. Yeah,
it's kind of it breaks it out of that environment, and you need to find out how that's triggered. And I don't know, maybe someone was just inserting mad skater names and just found it, hugely long ones.
Joey Joe Shabadoo.
That's the code. Yeah.
It does seem, you'd think all these years later, the fact that people are still finding new ways to do things with these systems, it makes you wonder what else is kind of buried inside consoles that haven't been discovered yet. Which I think is always really interesting. And this, like you said, everyone kind of did the swap trick back in the day, but this does seem, a bit more elegant than jamming half a matchstick in the disc eject mechanism.
And Hackaday at the end, they say, expect to see memory cards with this exploit pre-installed to hit your favorite site in the future. Yeah, so that could be pretty cool.
Yeah, what's interesting is that there seems to be more of a scene around the PlayStation 2, obviously with like free boot and that kind of thing. It always surprised me that it seemed to be a lot more active on the PS2 and the PS1.
Yeah, I guess maybe Swap Trick just like defeated all of that, or maybe people are just looking back now because there's that PSIO as well, and devices are starting to get hacked and modded.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same with you guys. I've become a lot more nostalgic for the PS1 in the last year or two. I've actually got one set up permanently now.
I've got a pretty good PS1 collection, and I never buy for the PS1. The majority of it is just like games from Cart Boots when I was a teenager and games from when I was a kid. But yeah, recently I've found myself kind of like going on eBay and looking for a couple of PS1 games and stuff. Like I never used to be like after the PS1 games, but now, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's just all of a sudden it's like it was the 25-year anniversary the other year or what, or just lockdown getting to me and looking at other consoles to collect for. But yeah, there's something about it which is becoming more nostalgic for me. There's definitely more love for it from me recently.
I'm definitely emulating it a lot more as well, like on my TV and using RetroArch and stuff.
So, great to see new ways of being able to unlock your PlayStation collection and get games from anywhere. Now, maybe you've got a Game Boy Advance lying around and you're thinking, I could do with watching a couple of movies on that.
So a YouTuber has apparently found the worst way to watch the film Tenet on his Game Boy Advance SP. Now, I found this really interesting because at the point of recording this, the Angry Video Game Nerd released a new episode last night, and it was about how he's trying to like watch Shrek on Game Boy Advance. Like he watches Shrek on his Game Boy Advance, on a video cartridge. I didn't know these were a thing. Like I'm completely dumbfounded by it. I didn't realize you could buy films for the Game Boy Advance. Like I was like, did you guys know this was a thing?
Not at all, no.
I obviously knew about the PSP and everything you could. I'd never heard of it on the Game Boy Advance, though. It's a bit being cartridge-based, I was like, I didn't think
it's cartridge-based. Now, don't get me wrong, it looks terrible, which is why
240 by 160 resolution.
Yeah, and it's choppy as hell. So obviously this is why he's saying it's the worst way to watch Tenet. Now, I've not seen Tenet. I don't know what it's about or anything like that, but essentially this comes from a YouTuber called Wolfden, and essentially there was a meme kind of like when the film came out about how it's a Christopher Nolan film, how he really wanted people to go see it at the cinema, and he was saying you get the full experience of seeing this film, the sound quality and everything from seeing it at the cinema. Bearing in mind this was all during like the peak of COVID and all the cinemas were closed, which I thought, so he kind of thought like off the back of that, he kind of wanted to make a meme out of Christopher Nolan. So he thought, what's the worst way I could possibly watch this film? And that was by putting it on a Game Boy Advance cartridge. Now, what's really interesting is I've watched the video on it. He goes through the entire process of how he gets it on there, how he's converted it into the the video it needs to be and all this kind of stuff. But not only has he had to put it on cartridge, he's had to put it on 5 cartridges because each cartridge can only store half an hour of video, and it looks terrible. But you can actually watch the film. Like, you can tell what's going on. The film is, I don't want to use the term watchable, but it is watchable. There is sound. There is, it works. It's just choppy as hell. But
I want to get Dan Wood on there doing one of his YouTube videos. I've looked into it a bit here, and actually it was like $10 for one, or $20 for a movie, which is not that bad actually.
Oh, what, to buy them in the past?
Yeah, but also, there was that Game Boy player, right? Wasn't there? Which was for the GameCube.
Yeah, apparently they don't work on it.
Yeah, but remember we covered the TV out on the DS Lite?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a hack there.
Maybe there is. Yeah, no, there might be, yeah. But apparently, according to the AVGN video, he was saying that he didn't think that Nintendo was scared that people were going to videotape if you put it into the Game Boy player, you'd then videotape the film and then sell the film.
That would be quality worth watching.
Like 240 by.
Bloody hell.
Which really made me laugh. But yeah, he's gone to a lot of effort with this. He's even printed out little labels for the cartridges and, part 1 of 5, part 2 of 5. He's got the Nintendo seal of approval on there. He's really gone to a lot of effort for this project. And even made sure that he actually bought a copy of the film so he wasn't breaking the law and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, a lot of effort for, essentially just for a meme. which is quite funny. But I looked up on eBay how much like these, the Shrek Game Boy Advance film is now, and they're like £60 for just like Shrek on Game Boy Advance. And
how many cartridges did that come on?
No, I think it was just the one. Because of it's like a box set where you get Shark Tale with it as well. So I'm assuming it's just one, but I'm not too sure why he had to put this on 5. But I think he said it was because of the quality of the film.
They need to, because
flash cards as well.
Because it's like a kid's handheld. They need to do like a really gruesome, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something for the Game Boy Advance. Clockwork Orange.
Amazing.
Yeah, I do think, top marks for effort, just to, like you said, really just to annoy Christopher Nolan. He went to a lot of effort just to do that, really. So, imagine him watching that and just seething. But he bought the film, so there's nothing he can do about it legally. If Christopher Nolan's got a sense of humour, he should be like, let's put it out there, let's release it. On the Game Boy Advance.
Stick it on Amazon, you can buy them.
Now, kind of following up the PlayStation 1 story, you mentioned a new hack there. This is interesting. The Sega Saturn that we know is obviously a platform that is kind of famed for being very hard to crack. I mean, it only actually got cracked properly in the last couple of years. But now, a flash cart is on the way that will make it really easy to play all your favourite Sega Saturn games without the discs.
Yeah, so we saw a video a while ago from Dr. Abrasive, who actually showed us that he'd managed to hack it using the video port and at the back. And basically, he created an exploit for that. But now he's helped develop this piece of hardware, which is called the Saturnator, and it plugs into the back in your video area, and it seems to work really well. They've just done a video on GameSack about it, so I thought it was definitely worth mentioning. Like, there's a few things here. It reads so much stuff on there. Like, if you've got a QWAV file or a QImage or a QBin, but it also runs an ISO. They're saying you need to make sure that your Saturn's backup battery is actually charged, because if you put it in, then it won't work. But it's got this even a little plastic lever on it, so when you put it in, like the video card had a little handle, you got a little plastic lever and you can pull it out. But all reports seem to be it's playing like nearly all of the games absolutely perfectly. I think all of them have been playing perfectly, and you can use some really big micro SD cards on there, so there's no size limit. Like, there's 1 terabyte micro SD cards work. So you could have every single Saturn game on there and just load it up straight into the menu. So it looks like a really cool little piece of hardware, this does, the Saturnator.
I mean, looking at the price of it, it's on the higher end of the scale for flash carts, $259.99. So, it's quite a bit of money. But, there's not... If you've got a Saturn and you want this solution, there are not many other ways to do it, really. I've got a modded Sega Saturn, but I had to get a mod chip for that. I had to open it up and solder it in to various points on the board and into the power supply as well. And even then, it can be, sometimes I'll put a disc in my Saturn and it will mistake it for an audio CD, like 9 times out of 10 until I eventually get it loading. So it's always been very flaky, kind of trying to run backups on the Sega Saturn. So I think having this solution, even though it is quite expensive, $259, I think there definitely is a need for it.
Yeah, and sorry, the guy's called Professor Abrasive. I seem to have downgraded him.
He's had an upgrade in the meantime.
But also, you can update the firmware on these as well. So they are going to develop and, there'll be extra functions and capability, which is pretty cool. And it means that you're not getting inside your machine. If you don't want to open it up, then you can just stick this in the back and go for it.
There's obviously a lot of games, I imagine, Joe, that you would like to play that you haven't got in your Saturn collection. That probably cost more than $259.
Yeah, I was going to say there's probably quite a few out there that cost a lot more than $259, $269. So it would definitely be a good solution, but it is sold out. So you have to put yourself on the waiting list if you want one now. So, in the meantime, I could be buying and bidding on eBay on Sega Saturn games.
For one game.
They're saying also with the extra RAM cartridges, you put it in the cartridge port of the Saturn and you get some extra RAM. That's working, but the MPEG cartridge, maybe not, So there's going to be a mix. I don't know if you'll be able to run the video and this, if you'll be able to have a pass-through or something. So
I mean, if it's using that port anyway, you know, maybe there's a possibility that, I mean, not many people had those anyway. I think they're only to play video CDs. So, I mean, if you are desperate to, you know, watch 4 Weddings and a Funeral on your, your Saturn, you can probably just unplug it for an hour or two. But maybe that's the kind of thing they could actually make in, you know, put it on the firmware, like an emulator for the video cart.
Yeah, that could be cool. There could be loads of different options with this.
Yeah, so nice to see some new Sega Saturn development. So everything we talked about, of course, will be in our show notes. We put them all in there to save you Googling around every week at theretrohour.com. Now, before we chat Ocean Software with Bill Harbison, our special guest, let's give a massive thank you to this week's sponsor, our dear friends at Harry's. Now, how are your chins looking, boys?
Mine's feeling pretty fresh at the moment. It's pretty fresh. I actually had a shave about 2 days ago, and it was a clean shave, and there was only one reason why I had a clean shave, and that was because it was Harry's.
Yeah, listen to this. Listen to that. Baby smooth. Baby smooth. Now, this is Harry's, who have got a really interesting story, actually. I mean, they're 2 ordinary guys who were fed up with overpriced razors, and they went on a mission to fix shaving. And they knew the only way they could do that is by buying their own factory. So Harry's mission is really simple. They take less profit. They offer great quality products at a fair price as well. And they've got amazing quality blades that are almost half the price of the leading 5-blade brand. It does feel like a premium product when you use Harry's, though, doesn't it? You know, the way it feels in your hand, and like you said, that smooth shave that you get compared to stuff that you'll get in the supermarket.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And what I love about it as well is I always get really bad nicks, really bad acne and stuff whenever I have a shave. But whenever I shave with a Harry's one, I never do. It is always, like you say, it's just that smoothness and that quality.
So we want you to try Harry's for yourself, and that includes this trial set, everything you need for a close, comfortable shave. And of course, you'll be helping out the podcast by supporting our sponsors. So get started shaving with Harry's today by claiming your trial set for just £3.95. And it will be delivered to you, including a razor handle, a 5-blade cartridge, the foaming shave gel, and a travel blade cover. You know, things are starting to open up. Maybe a possibility of holidays this summer. You need to get sorted for that. So you can do it right now by heading to harrys.com/retro. That's harrys.com/retro. Thanks to our very good friends at Harry's. Now, of course, we have got a Patreon running at the moment as well. We did do, it's about 2.5 hours. Our patrons hang out on Sunday night, I think. Me and Joe are still on there at about 10:15 at night.
Yeah, I'm usually the one who ducks out early because of the baby, but I was like, I'm going in tonight. I'm having fun.
We did a really good thing, actually, which was discussing video game movies and the up-and-coming video game movies and what we think they would be. I found that really interesting. And also, we did a mad talk about internet security and Wi-Fi, which I just really love getting nerdy on.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And we had a really good turnout to this one as well. So you can come along and join us for that each month if you are a patron. Or, you know, some people just come in and watch. You know, if you just want to have it on the background, you don't have to join in. But it is great just to catch up and nerd out about all things retro. And, of course, you also get our patrons' exclusive podcast, The Retro Hour After Hours. Now, we're going to be recording a new episode of that on Friday. This time, we're going to be talking about video game urban legends. I'm looking forward to this one.
I've had to compile a list for this one, you know, and I think it's going to be funny hearing about like the school ground ones as well, like the playground ones.
Yeah, I was thinking a mix of like urban legends that we know and that we heard when we were kids, but also ones that are out there in the kind of public, because, you know, we've heard of Polybius, we've heard of all of that kind of stuff, but there's other ones, there's other really weird ones as well.
Yeah, so you can check out our patrons' exclusive podcast. I think we're up to about episode 9 coming out soon. So that should be with you in the next week. You also get the regular show early, you get it ad-free, and of course you'll be helping out the show. That's a real reason that we have a Patreon running, just to ensure the future of this podcast, and it means we can bring it to you each week and get these amazing guests as well. And of course, for supporting the show, you will get a mention in the most prestigious high score table in the world of retro gaming, the Retro Hour Hall of Fame. Like this week, a big thank you to Jake Worrell,
Instant Gratification Monkey,
Gavin Creech,
Asin Ivanov,
and Wonderly Chesim,
who all made donations into the running of our show. We really appreciate your support, guys. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to do the same, you'll find all the details on our website at theretrohour.com.
And before we go, there's one thing I'd just like to mention, which was, you know, we've seen 2 podcasts, Arcade Attack Go and Arcade Perfect. And, you know, these are fantastic podcasts. So, guys, please check out the back catalogues of these podcasts, and, you know, if there are any listeners from Arcade and Attack and Arcade Perfect, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's always sad. I mean, those are both, two of my favourite podcasts. So when other retro gaming podcasts kind of go on hiatus or end, it's very sad. But obviously, we're going to do our best to keep the show going. So your support is massively appreciated. Your reviews as well on your favourite podcast platforms, that always makes a big difference. It'll take you a couple of minutes to do it on Apple Podcasts at most, and then that helps get us in the charts in front of new people. So honestly, thank you so much for all of those amazing reviews so far. Keep them coming. Now, next, we are going to go inside the legendary Ocean Software with this week's special guest, Bill Harbison. You're listening to the Retro Hour podcast, and it's time to welcome on this week's very special guest. Now, today, we're going to be getting some inside stories from one of our favourite companies. And, we always used to get these games as kids. It was one of the most infamous British software houses in the 80s and 90s. We're going to be talking about Ocean Software with this week's very special guest. Welcome to the Retro Hour podcast, Bill Harbison. Hello, Bill.
Hello, guys. Good to speak to you.
You too. Now, before we get into, those kind of stories of that golden era back at Ocean, it's always nice to kind of find out where your journey started with computers and video games. Do you remember the first ever computer or game that you saw then, your first experience?
The first game that I saw was probably 1977, when we went on a school trip to London. So they took us all from Scotland on a train, took us down to London, and in this hotel that they were staying in, there was the arcade machine Pong, and we couldn't get near it. Nobody could get near it to play it because it was this room that contained the machine was just rammed with kids all the time. So you couldn't even get to play it. But that was the first time that I actually saw a computer game or an arcade game.
Were they regretting putting it in the hotel after all the kids were gathering for a long time?
I don't know. They must have made quite a bit of money off it because it was being played constantly. It's just that when we came in, I can remember coming into the hotel and dropping our cases off in our room and coming downstairs, and there was just such a buzz coming from this room. We managed to squeeze our way in through the door into the room, and you couldn't get near it. It was maybe 8 kids deep before you even got to see it.
And were you really into art as a kid? And what kind of stuff influenced you?
Yeah, I was sort of like an only child, and I was quite solitary. So I'd spend a lot of time drawing comics and drawing pictures out of the Radio Times of people like Clint Eastwood and all that sort of thing. And the more I kept doing it, the better I got. So I was quite prolific at drawing portraits by the time I was about 12. So I was good at drawing, but it wasn't until later on that I got the chance to go to Glasgow School of Art, and I decided not to go because I had been offered a job after quite a lengthy process at Ocean.
And what kind of comics influenced you as well, and what were you reading at the time?
Well, we had stuff like 2000 AD and obviously the Beano and all that other stuff, but I was brought up in a tiny little village in Scotland in the middle of nowhere, and in the newsagents they used to have this cardboard box which was full of these comics that they'd brought over, and it was all the Marvel and DC comics. So I was fascinated from an early age with Superman and Batman and Spider-Man and the Hulk and all that sort of thing. So I used to get my mum to buy them, and I used to draw them for myself. I don't know why I wanted to draw them, but I was sort of learning in the process.
Well, when did you get your first computer then, and what was your first home computer system?
That would have been the ZX81. I was probably about 14 because I was in secondary school at the time, probably about 13 or 14. And it was just one of the teachers brought one in on a science class and hooked it up to the TV. And I was just fascinated by it. And all he did was type in a few lines of BASIC, which was a Mandelbrot generator. And it put random pixels and a pattern on the screen. And I just thought this was amazing. And pestered my parents to get me one.
What kind of things were you doing at first with it? Like, were you initially gaming and then getting into programming?
I wasn't doing a lot with it, to be fair. I was mainly typing in the programs from the manual, and that was about it. But I guess I just enjoyed the process of typing commands into the computer and it responding and doing stuff on the screen.
To be fair, there wasn't a whole lot you could do on the ZX81 anyway, was there?
Well, no, not really, but recently I've seen on YouTube there's been all sorts of like games and stuff that were out, but I wasn't able to get my hands on any of those. So it was just simple basic programming I was doing.
Well, the Spectrum must have seemed like a massive leap forward, obviously having colour graphics.
Yeah, I saw the Spectrum at secondary school a few years after the ZX81, and then I thought, well, I need to get one of these now. Still had no idea of doing graphics on it. It was just basically to swap games with my friends at school and just waste time playing games.
Well, what got you into doing graphics on it?
It was about the time where I was possibly going to be going to art school, but I was still into stuff like computer and video games and like Your Sinclair and that sort of thing. And I always saw like on adverts for the games, there was always an address at the bottom, like 8 Central Street, Manchester for Ocean and various other ones. And I just had the sort of revelation that there must be some people must be making these games. Somebody wants to sit down and draw these graphics. So I started off doing very simple sort of user-defined graphics on the keyboards, where you can set a certain part of the character set to type and create graphics in it, and then you sort of lay it out. You could only make little tiny sort of sprite-sized images, and then later on I managed to get a hold of. I think I bought a copy of the Artist 2, which was like a full graphics package for the Spectrum. So after, because Computer and Video Games magazine had games that were out in the arcade, plus it had Spectrum reviews in it as well, I started doing mock-ups of what the new arcade machines that were coming out would look like on the Spectrum. So I did a few of those and did a few other images like that, and started sending them off to different companies around the UK.
It was kind of amazing back then because you could just pick a random company, send them something and actually get a response. What was it like when you started getting stuff back and, interest, and how did that lead to paid work?
I didn't get any response for quite a while, actually. I got a response from Electronic Arts saying that they weren't looking for anybody at all. The same with US Gold. I got a letter from Elite saying that they were interested in what I was doing and could I send them some more stuff. So I sent them some more graphics, and they came back and said, with this was, we like the look of this. Can you send us some more stuff? And then I sent them some more, and then they came back and said, well, we're not really sure now. But this process was taking months because obviously I've got to create whatever graphics on the Spectrum, then have to record it on a tape and stick it in the post to send to Elite, and then has to go through their system. Somebody has to see it, and then decision has to be made, and then they have to write a letter back to me. So the whole thing was taking way too long.
And where did Ocean come into the picture?
Well, I was getting a bit disheartened because I wasn't getting any responses from anyone really that was concrete. So I remember a friend of mine saying, have you sent your stuff to Ocean? And I was like, no, because Ocean aren't very good. I'd never even thought of sending them to Ocean. So I did send them to Ocean, and then at the time we didn't have a telephone in the house, so we needed to give I had to write the phone number of the house next door. So about a month after I sent my tape and letter off, the woman next door came and knocked on and said, "There's a woman from England on the phone wanting to speak to me." So that was Lorraine Starr, who asked me if I wanted to come down for an interview.
Well, I bet you're like, oh, that was just my secretary answering the phone there.
I wish I'd thought of that.
I mean, so you weren't a fan of Ocean's games at the time. So, I mean, like, around this era then, it was obviously before their boom in the late 80s, early 90s, I guess.
It was the Street Hawk and Knight Rider era. So, because I remember I had, I think the main thing that put me off was I'd sent off in a catalogue for a copy of Street Hawk. And it took about between 4 and 6 months to arrive. And then when it arrived, it wasn't the game that was on the screenshots. It was like a version of Joust, with the ostriches jumping from platform to platform. It was that. And I just thought, no, this company's rubbish. Why would I want to send my stuff to them? But then when I did send it to them, and I got a response from them, and they asked me to come down for an interview.
Well, when you went down for an interview, did you meet Gary Bracey? And what was your first impression of Ocean and the MD at the time?
Well, the place looked pretty old, and it looked like a bit of a state even then, because you come into the centre of Manchester, you turn up at this old building which was owned by some religious group. And you go down into the cellar, and there's barely any carpet on the floor, and like the walls are falling apart and stuff. I did meet Gary for the first time, and he seemed like a decent guy, but obviously I'd just come down from my little village in Scotland, and everything was quite intimidated. So I was intimidated by just about everybody there. But he seemed nice enough and said that he'd looked through the tape of stuff that I had sent with the graphics manager at the time, and they looked through the stuff, and then they went out of the room, and I was like sat in there for about a couple of minutes, and they came back in and said, "Well, can you start in 2 weeks?" So I had 2 weeks to basically tell my parents, I'm leaving home, I'm going to Manchester. So I had to pack a suitcase and move down to Manchester. They put me up in a hotel for 2 weeks until I could find accommodation, like a flat. And that was it. That's where it started.
What a massive life change, though. I mean, you must have been nervous, were you?
I was terrified. I'd never been out of like where I'd been out of the village, but I hadn't been out of that area of Scotland before. So coming down to the city where it was much more busy, there was loads more people, there was much more stuff going on. It was pretty terrifying, but it was either carry on or go back home where there's not really much happening, job-wise, and I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. It was quite a big eye-opener for me because I had to actually go and speak to people that I didn't know. So I was having to create relationships with people and get to know people, which I wasn't very good at. So it brought me out of my shell quite a lot. And it was like being back at school, to be quite honest with you. It was just I was expecting it to be like guys older than me, with like cardigans and nice haircuts and being very just getting on with the job and that sort of thing. And it wasn't. It was just a load of kids my age just messing about. It was like being at school, but the teacher, Gary Bracey, wasn't around all the time. So there was just so much stuff happening.
Well, your first major project was Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge. What do you remember about working on this game?
Oh God, how long have you got? It's like there was that 2 weeks where I had to stay home, and then I came down on the train, and then the following day I went into Gary's office, and he said, "Well, you're working on Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge," and I was like, "What?" Firstly, because they were doing another one, a third one, so I thought, well, this is going to test me because I'm either going to get the sack straight away or I'm going to carry on. And I hadn't done any animation at that point. I'd only done mock-ups and images. So I had to learn to do animation on the fly. But fortunately, they had videos of the recent, the previous Olympics of like the 100 meters and the long jump and all that sort of stuff. So I could basically copy what was happening on the screen. And I was working out how to do my own sort of run cycles and jump animations and all that. I was just basically I was winging it to make sure I didn't get the sack.
Well, obviously that year, 1988, I think that was the year that Daly finished outside the medals for the first time. Did that affect the sales of the game then? 'Cause I know that was like the last one in the trilogy, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't really know much about how much it sold. I know that it was pretty important because they had licensing from Adidas trainers, and they had Lucasade as well. They were plastered all over the game in various places. And Gary had the idea of doing the training section at the beginning to so that you would go in with those stats to play the game. They don't actually have any. They don't make a slight bit of difference in the game at all. You can play that training thing all you want. It makes no difference.
I all suspected that, if I'm honest.
The same with the trainers. The trainers make no difference either.
Did you actually meet Daley Thompson at any point?
No, we didn't. No, I think Gary did, but we didn't. We got a photocopy of a signature that he wrote on his book. That he has a book that he had with him that had all the stats and stuff about the Olympics and all that sort of thing. So we got a third-rate version of his autograph.
Well, obviously on the Spectrum, doing animation, Color Clash was a big, you could call it a feature of the Spectrum. How did you work within its limitations then, Color Clash? Was that something you had to overcome quite regularly?
Not really, no. We with a lot of the stuff that we were doing, the main graphics were sort of monochrome or with very limited color. But any color that I did want to put into it, then it would have been either outside of the game area or on the loading screen. And I'd done graphics on the Spectrum for long enough that I knew how to maybe not get around the color clash, but hide it or make it not look as bad as it could.
Well, you worked on a huge title next, which was Chase HQ. Did you play the arcade version?
I thought you were going to say Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja.
We'll do a whole episode about that one.
Yeah, were you much of a fan of it, or did you play the arcade version much?
No, I didn't know anything about it. We got the arcade machine delivered to the office, like the full one, you sit in it and it's got the screen and everything on it. We got all of that. I think we had it for about a couple of months, and then we had just like an arcade board version with like a steering wheel on it, and the actual machine was taken off somewhere else. I've no idea where. But no, I hadn't really played it, so I had to sort of learn to play it in the process of doing the game.
And were you impressed at the game then when you got into it?
Oh yeah, it looked great. It was. I wasn't sort of infamous for not being able to play games very well. In fact, most of my time at Ocean, like, people would get me to play the games, and if I was really good at it, they knew they had to make it harder. So. Yeah, I mean, it was good, but we weren't able to get any graphics out of the arcade board, so it was basically me sat on the front of the machine, drawing pictures of the cars and various other objects on paper, and then taking it to the Spectrum and drawing it out that way.
Wow. So I was going to ask that. That was going to be my next question, actually, if there was any elements you could actually take straight from the arcade machine. Did you have to kind of re-implement everything? I know you worked with John O'Brien on the conversion. I mean, kind of talk us through what was involved converting an arcade game like that to a home system.
Well, he was in charge of the code, and Mike Lamb had worked on WEC Le Mans, that Le Mans game that Imagine had brought out, and he had done the track on that with sentient software. And I think Mike had given John O'Brien the code for the track, and John O'Brien had managed to sort of improve it, make it faster, made the roads split, and all that sort of thing. It was really impressive to see without any of the graphics on it, just the road moving on its own. So we knew it was going to be like a really good title. So, I had to sit in front of the machine, sketch out all the cars, like the different angles of the car, turning left and right, and the animated smoke, and the hand coming out of the window and putting the light on the top. So that was all drawn on paper first and then put into the Spectrum. I did some sketches of the different types of cars, and I think by that time we were doing graphics on the Atari ST, so we didn't have, on the Spectrum, there wasn't much in the way of being able to scale graphics down. So on the ST, I could actually draw the full-size car and then scale it down so there were 6 different sizes of car going into the distance, and just needed to tidy up each one to make sure that when they came towards you, that it was as smooth as possible. But even though I did do 6, they ended up only using 4. So it was a bit jerky at coming towards the screen as I would have liked, but I guess they could only hold like a certain amount of graphics in memory at a time.
Well, even then, I mean, the amount of detail that was in the home conversions, I mean, compared to most arcade games at the time, it was actually a lot in there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we did manage to, like, there was the trees and the buildings we did a different way from everybody else, I think, because the trees were made up of, there was like a base with the trunk and the bottom of the leaves, and then there was a narrow strip of leaves that was repeated up, and then there was a cap on the top. So it wasn't all one complete massive sprite. It was made up of 3 different parts. And we did that with the buildings as well, so that you could have big objects going past you, but they weren't actually big. They were like repeated in the middle.
Yeah, there was a good variety of levels. You could tell the difference, but also like the helicopter, I really thought was awesome with the shadow cast onto the ground when it was going above you at the same time.
Oh yeah. Well, that was just like everything else. I mean, I had to draw the helicopter down and then draw it into the Spectrum from paper. But there was a whole area at the top of the screen that was not being used. So I said to John about putting like the top of the arcade machine above the gameplay area, so that you would have the lights would flash when it was just flashing brightness on and off on the lights, and you'd have the scoreboard there and the time and all the rest of it. And because I was like into drawing and drawing portraits, and you had the characters pop up, I decided to like we'll do Nancy. Each of the baddies that you chase will have their own portrait, which was based on other people in the office. So I managed to get quite a lot of my own stuff in there that wasn't in the arcade. So I managed to put my own
stamp on it.
Yeah.
Well, alongside the Specky, you're also working on the Amstrad and C64. Which machine did you kind of prefer working for?
I think I liked the Amstrad because of the amount of colours, but I wasn't happy with the fat sprites, the double width sprites that they had on it, and on the Commodore 64 as well. That's probably the only thing that was... I liked the amount of colour and how much you could actually do, but the fact that everything looks stretched And it's one of the things that sort of annoys me about the Amstrad version of Chase HQ is the portraits don't look half as good as they do on the Spectrum.
Did you do anything where it is like kind of develop the Amstrad version and pump the Specky version out from that, or was it all individually done on each machine?
No, we did the Spectrum version first, and then once that was all done and dusted, it was basically put the code into the Amstrad and redo the graphics if needed. You could use the Spectrum ones in some cases and just color them a different color. But I think he wanted to do them because it would be faster with the double width pixels. So I ended up having to redraw all the cars and all the graphics and everything anyway. So that was done.
I know that was a constant frustration of friends of mine back in the day who had Amstrads that, many games would literally just put the Spectrum graphics pixel for pixel on there pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't think it was me that did it, but somebody did the loading screen and just changed the colors on it so that each bit had a different color. And I think they did the same with the Robocop loading screen, where they just changed the different colors of the pixels. But anything, if you want something done quick, then that's probably what you do, because it was done in the Chase HQ probably took about 5.5 months, but we're to do the Amstrad in 4 weeks.
Wow.
So it wasn't too bad for him, because he would just get the code and tweak it a bit so that it worked. So it was more work for the artist, really, to redraw any graphics that needed doing.
Well, obviously, by the time we got into the late 80s, early 90s, everyone was moving over to 16-bit. How did you make the transition to the 16-bit machines like the Amiga and the ST?
Well, I had an Atari ST anyway, so when I was doing the graphics for Chase HQ, I was creating a little 16 color palette, and I was drawing, funnily enough, portraits again. I was drawing pictures of people and drawing shading and stuff just to learn how to do it. And when we found out that we were doing Batman next, it was basically the code for Chase HQ was sort of reused, and it was changed so that it would run on the ST and Amiga. But the first thing that I did was I started, I had a magazine with pictures of Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson as the Joker. And in this little square, this little sprite box on the ST, I was drawing pictures. I had Batman and I had the Joker on it. And Gary just happened to walk past at the time when I was doing it. And he went, "Oh, that's really good. We'll put that in the game." And I was like, "How? What do you mean put it in the game?" He says, "We'll put it in the game somehow." So that got put in on the utility belt to say whether the energy was going down. It would change from Batman to the Joker. And that was the first thing I'd done. It wasn't even meant to be in the game. It was just me practicing using the colors and learning how to use the machine.
Well, how did Ocean score the Batman license then? Because that movie was absolutely huge. Maybe it wasn't before, actually, but when it hit, my God, that was a proper change in culture, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't think these big film companies didn't think that computer games were going to bring them much revenue. So when Gary or whoever went and said, "Can we have the license to Batman?" it was probably about a few grand. And we created the game for it based on that. Even Jurassic Park, they got the license for that when it was still a novel. So that was quite astute, quite brilliant I think it was Dave Ward who managed to get hold of that at the time, just on the basis of the novel. So he wanted to make a game of it based on that, and then obviously there was the film as well. So it was big, even bigger.
Yeah, because that Batman movie was absolutely huge. I even remember, the Batmobile toy that all the kids had and everything. So it just works so well having the kind of game coming out at the same time as well.
that was my reference for the game. Actually, was the toy car, because obviously we had to draw the Batmobile the same way that I had drawn the car in Chase HQ, but I had no reference. The only thing I had was a picture of Michael Keaton stood next to the door of the Batmobile, and you could see like a bit of a fin, I think. So I had no idea what it looked like. So it was just a case of like draw everything else, and hopefully they will come out with like a toy in plenty of time for me to use it. So everything else was done. And then right at the very last hour, I think I had gone up to the comic shop in Manchester, and it was there. They actually had the Batmobile out. So I just bought it, took it back, straight down to the machines, and started like drawing the car rotating left and right. I mean, at that point, I was so desperate. I was going to get the Amiga and trying to use the 3D modeler on the Amiga to try and make. It was just impossible. I couldn't work out how to use it fast enough. But fortunately, this little toy car came out in plenty of time, so that saved my life.
It's interesting you mentioned like how, Warner Brothers didn't really see video games as being a major marketing or merchandise potential. I mean, did you not get any help at all, or any inside like sketches or anything off them at all then?
We got the script, and we got a load of sketches that Tim Burton had used like to frame up the shots. So there was a load of like really sketchy drawings of Batman and various other characters doing things. Just storyboards of the film. So we got them, and that was about it. So it was good for like the gameplay to sort of work out where the character was going in the game, what level design we were going to have. We were going to have like 2D walking ones, which was basically just Robocop. In fact, it was Mike Lamb that programmed it. And the 3D areas were going to be obviously on the Spectrum and the Commodore 64. They were side on. So they got myself and John O'Brien back in because we'd done Chase HQ. So we had to basically do Chase HQ again, but with more colours.
Well, I remember that Christmas, I mean, pretty much all the kids at school got Amiga 500s with the Batman pack. And having like, an Amiga pack built around that game, that must have really helped take it and Ocean to the next level, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just get told about this at the last minute. So it was just a case of we had our heads down trying to get the game out on time. And then occasionally we'd hear, oh, it's going to be bundled with this and that. And we'd think, oh, yeah, that's more money for them. we're going to get the same amount of money, but they're going to really cash in with this. So, yeah, it was all right for the company, but, we just got the same.
Well, Ocean kind of started becoming the kings of movie licenses, and like movie license games were quite bad before that. Did it change the company?
Yeah, because everything basically had to be a license or something that they could hook on to a film or whatever. Because I know Simon Butler has said this, that he had a design for an original game that wasn't a license, and then when he went to take it to Gary to show him, he was like, "Oh, can we put it on a license? Can we hook it onto a film or something?" And he was like, "No, this is something that I've just made up." But they weren't interested because obviously they wanted to make their money back, and they wanted to make a lot of money back, so they could buy these fairly cheap licenses. I'm assuming by the time they got to Jurassic Park, they were more expensive. So they managed to get them fairly cheap, and then were making quite a lot of money on sales. I think the film companies managed to twig that, hey, they're making a lot of money and we're not getting any of it. So they put I think the amount of money that they would charge for licenses went up.
Well, between Batman and Jurassic Park, you actually did the graphics on Lethal Weapon, that I actually think is a really underrated platformer. I mean, I used to love that game as a kid. What do you remember about working on that project?
Oh, God. It was... I didn't really have much to do with that. I think the only thing I did was there's an area at the start where you choose your level.
Yeah,
It's like
in the office.
That was the only thing I did on that.
Right.
I just remember that it was really difficult.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that game to this day.
Oh yeah, the guy who programmed it was he was notorious for doing really difficult games, and the graphics style, they decided to go for a sort of Mario style for Lethal Weapon, which, well, I don't know. It's not what I would have done, but it's some people seem to like it. A lot of people didn't.
It was very in vogue at that time. I mean, they did the same with the Addams Family game as well, didn't they? Like kind of Mario clones, I guess, because they were kind of flavor of the month.
Yeah, but I can see why they would do it with the Addams Family, because it was more sort of family orientated, where you wouldn't say Lethal Weapon was like a family orientated game or film, would you?
And it was a very slippy game to play. I remember kind of jumping on stuff and sliding everywhere with a Lethal Weapon.
Yeah. It was, everything seemed to be icy for some reason. I don't know why.
I like the music on it as well. I think it's used to blast.
Yeah, there's a weird rumor going around. Apparently, Rihanna stole one of her tracks from Lethal Weapon, but I don't know if that's correct.
Seriously, I don't know that.
Yeah. Check on YouTube. There's a comparison with the Lethal Weapon tune and a Rihanna tune. It's kind of close.
That's crazy.
Well, Ocean also did the home conversion of the arcade Toki. And the graphics on that, I remember being really arcade-like. I mean, were you involved in that project, and how did that kind of license come about? Do you remember?
I don't know much about how they got the license. I know it wasn't being done in the office, but I don't know what happened with that. I think Gary was looking at the game and decided that he liked the sprites, but he didn't like the backgrounds. So he decided to take them in-house, and I got them. I'd never worked on a Commodore 64 before and haven't since. So I was using a graphics editor that John Megan, the programmer, had written. I think he'd written it anyway. And he showed me basically how to use it and how to set up the backgrounds and the platforms and stuff. And again, I had a TV and a video set up next to the computer, and every so often I would just press pause and like draw stuff out on paper and then lay the levels out like they were in the video. So I was just copying what there was on the screen as much as I could. I don't even know if it was any good or whether it was terrible, because I'd never worked on the Commodore 64 before.
Well, Ocean got the license for Jurassic Park, and that seemed to be for the Amiga and the DOS version, because a SNES version came out that was different, and a Genesis version as well. What were the kind of details of them getting the license in there, and what did you think of that title as well?
That was one where I really sort of hated Gary Bracey for, because he got to go over to Hollywood and have meetings with Steven Spielberg and all these people quite a few times, and God, it was just so annoying when he'd come in and tell us all these stories about who he'd met. And so it was, he'd managed to get hold of the license, and I remember he wanted me to do some 3D graphics for something.
It had that first-person shooter section in, didn't it? So it might have been that.
Oh no! This was before we actually started the game.
Okay.
He wanted me to do a picture, a 3D model of the island with the logo on it, and he wanted the camera to sort of, as if it was skimming across the island and then pull up to show the logo. And I was like, right, okay. So I was using 3D Studio at the time on DOS. So I did this and gave it to him. And then it turns up on a video of, I think it's on YouTube as well, the licensing video for Jurassic Park. And my little animation that I did is on the video along with everything else, like lunch boxes and like breakfast cereals and video games. So that was the first thing. So I thought, wow, I'm on video now. So what happens next? And we had to design the game. We decided to go for a sort of top-down, at an angle sort of look. I did the animated sprites, so I did the main character. I did most of the dinosaurs. I didn't do the T-Rex, unfortunately.
And they were really accurate, weren't they? They were kind of to the film. I remember playing it and the dinosaurs being pretty much exactly the same ones as
we got
what
a
you saw.
lot of reference material from the movie company. We got all the sketches done by the artist there, and when we saw these pictures, we knew that we had to up our game, because these like pencil drawings of really detailed images of the different dinosaurs and stuff were just amazing to look at. So you had the angle, you had different pictures of like the heads, you had the full body, you had pictures of them like to scale with humans, so that you know what they look like. We got photographs of the cast with the costumes on, so we knew what the characters looked like.
Yeah, the kids were really accurate, and like the main characters as well. I really appreciated that when I played it. I was like, oh god, yeah, it actually felt exactly like the movie, you know.
Yeah, but we actually got proper reference material for it, so we could make it as much or as close to the like the movie as possible regarding the way things looked.
And there was that first person shooter section. Was that kind of like a little go at Alien vs Predator at the time, or kind of was it just because everybody was getting into FPS?
No, I think Gary had seen Wolfenstein and thought, well, can we have a Wolfenstein bit in it? And at the time, there was the company that did Danger Mouse and all those cartoons was based in Manchester and Chorlton, and we actually employed about 3 or 4 people from that studio to animate and draw the dinosaurs for that.
Well, wasn't one of the Stone Roses artists, I think it was John Squire, or someone working for that Danger Mouse company as well at one point?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, there was a weird crossover with the Stone Roses and Danger Mouse, I remember.
I know that one of the guys had worked with Don Bluth, who had done like loads of cartoons, like American Tail and Fievel Goes West, and another one had worked with Disney. So he had all these folders of stuff that I photocopied and I've now got in my possession, of like all the Disney characters, with showing you how to draw them, like with the like this is how you draw Mickey Mouse, and it shows you the head, and it shows you the different rotations of the head, it shows you the body, it shows you how he walks, it shows you how he runs and jumps, and God, there was just so much stuff. And they let me have copies of all this, and obviously because they were proper animators, and we were just trying to get by. But I did learn quite a lot from those guys, because they're really generous, and would, like, if I had anything that I wanted to know, like how do you do this, how do you do that, they would like sit down with you and show you how to do it, because they were all on light boxes with pens and paper. We were on the computers. So it wasn't until later on when they had to scan the images in on the computer, and then they were given to somebody else, I think, to colour in.
Well, obviously, I mean, it's hard to describe for people that don't remember it. But 1993, that was the summer of Jurassic Park. I mean, you know, a lot of people say that was after Star Wars, that was like the next massive movie. You know, there hasn't been many on that scale. It seemed like Ocean were really on a high then, and, you know, you're working on these AAA games. When and why did you leave Ocean then? What kind of happened?
I had started on Jurassic Park 2 on the SNES. Was it the SNES? Yeah, I think it was on the SNES. I'd worked on the SNES version of the first Jurassic Park because Gary wasn't happy with the Raptors, so he asked me to redraw them. So I think I've got a credit in the SNES version as well. But I think Gary was getting a bit fed up and decided that he wanted to leave. And the whole atmosphere of the place started to go down, and it was not long before they got bought up by Infogrames, and there was different management, and it didn't seem like much work was getting done, and they had spent a load of money on silicon graphics machines when Jurassic Park came out. It was like £30,000 for these machines and the software, ridiculous amount of money. And they were being used, but they were being used on a title that I don't think ever saw the light of day. So everybody was getting pissed off. So various people were leaving. Gary left. A few of my friends left to go to America. Another couple of friends left and set up a company who would end up being bought out by Marvel Comics, because they were a comics company called Malibu Comics. And they said, come and work for us. So I just left. I said I'd had enough. And, it seemed like things were going downhill there anyway. And it was a few years before it finally did sort of close down. I think they'd moved to another building by that point. So they seemed to be spending a lot of money, but they had no product out. So I decided to take the offer of work and went to go elsewhere.
Well, I mean, as a kid, I always remember when that Ocean logo flashed up. I always got really excited and knew it was going to be an experience. And a hell of a lot changed in that decade that you were there. You talk about, the mid-'80s to the mid-'90s, the video games industry changed beyond all recognition. And I know it's not really a retro title, but I've got to ask about your work on Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing about a decade ago, because that is one of my favourite ever kart races. I love that game.
Oh, yeah.
What was the story there, and what was it like working on the Sonic franchise?
Well, I'd worked on the Sonic franchise before. I had worked at a company called Rockpool Games who did mobile titles. And they did a mobile version of Sonic the Hedgehog, the first one. I think they did another couple of titles, Sonic Crash and Sonic something else. And then somebody had the brilliant idea to do Sonic the Hedgehog Golf. So I worked on, I did that as well.
I don't remember that one.
No, it's only on phones.
Right.
So they ended up getting bought out by IDOS, and then the company closed down. So I was stuck without a job and didn't really know what I was going to do, because I had a kid, and it wasn't easy for me to just get up and move somewhere else to do work. So it took me a while, but I decided to work for myself, to freelance. I had no idea what I was doing, but I found somebody that managed to get me some work, and it was at Sumo in Sheffield. So I got the interview there, and I went to the interview, and I was met by I think it was the producer and the lead artist. The lead artist was like, well, I can't tell you anything about this game. I can't tell you what it's about, because it's very top secret what we're working on. And I was like, oh, right, okay. So what sort of work do you want me to do? And he said, well, we want you to do some tracks for a sort of a racing sort of thing. And I went, so it's a racing game then, is it? And the two of them sort of looked at each other and were like, yeah, well, you've just kind of given it away. It's a racing game. So the producer was like, okay, like, we're working on Sonic the Hedgehog. We're basically doing Mario Kart, but with Sonic characters in it. So I was like, wow, yeah, I really want to do that. And I think I hadn't really done a lot of environment work then, but I think it was probably the fact that I'd worked on 3 Sonic titles before that they decided to give me a chance on the game. So it was I don't know which version you've been playing, but I was doing the DS version.
Right, yeah, I've got the DS. I've got them all, actually, and 360 and PS3. Yeah, it's one of my favourite racing games.
Oh, right. So I go there on my first day, and they're telling me about what they need. They needed like 12 tracks doing for this game, and it was really serious. They had to bring in a load of like contractors to get the game finished. On the like, probably it would have been the PS2 or 3, I think, I don't know, and the Xbox at the time. So it was a real struggle to get all this done. So it worked out I was going to be taking like 2 weeks per track. So I said to one of the guys that was working there, how many tracks have you got? Because like, you've been working on this for a year. You must have loads of tracks. And he said, no, we've got one. I was like, one? Yeah, well, it's not even one, because even that one's not finished. It runs, but it's not finished.
Wow.
So they were basically paying contractors to come in and do the work. I was supposed to be there for 3 months. And there must have been about 30 contractors in there. I ended up being there for 6 months and 2 weeks. And by that time, I was the only contractor there. And in the middle of that, they had made a load of redundancies as well. So I was thinking that my contract was going to get cut as well, but they kept me on for a bit longer. So I was trying to take what had been done on like the consoles, and I was going to do the DS version of what they had. As I was plowing through the tracks that I was doing, I was getting to a point where the track wasn't even built. They didn't even have any sort of sketches of what the track was going to look like. So I was just told to just make something up. So the only thing I would get would be a spline, which had the track on it, which was just like the road and nothing else. And then they'd say, well, just build something around that.
You had to use your imagination quite a bit then.
Pretty much, yeah, for a lot of it, yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think the game came out really well. You know, it is one of my favourite kind of kart races to play. Are you still involved in the games industry today then? What are you working on these days?
I am, yeah. This will be 33 years I've been in the industry now. It's quite a long time. Yeah, I'm working for a company called Skyhook Games that they do outsourced graphics for different sort of different projects, and I'm working on. I've worked on 2 things that I can't really talk about. One thing is coming out the second quarter of this year, so I can let you know about that when it's due to be out.
Right.
But a load of the people that I've worked with have, at the time when I was working on another project, have finished. In fact, I can't actually talk about this now. They were working on the PS5, the Destruction All-Stars.
Right, yeah.
So they've all the people from Skyhook that weren't working on other projects have been working on Destruction All-Stars, and I think that's out now on the PS5. If you've got one. It's really difficult
I
to
can't get hold of one.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I do, I'll check it out then.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, it's been incredible having a little journey, down memory lane with you and sharing some of your memories of those games that we grew up playing. So, been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and be our guest.
Yeah, it was good to talk to you. I hope it wasn't too boring.
Oh, no.
Not at all,
stuff.
mate. Really enjoyed it.